Well, it has been a key priority in Lansing for years now. How do we grow Michigan's population and keep young people from going to places like Chicago after graduation? We're going to hear some ideas from the state's chief growth officer, but first, let's look at some of these numbers. Starting in Detroit, back in May, Mayor Duggan announced Detroit has grown its population for the second year in a row. The city gained nearly 7,000 households last year and was leading Michigan in population growth. Now, looking at the growth for the whole state, between 2023 and 24, Michigan population grew by 6% or 57,000 people. At the Mackinac Policy Conference last month, the state announced the launch of Make Michigan Home, or Make My Home. Get it? Right? It's giving $769,000 to split amongst 5 groups, including the city of Detroit. Detroit is using the money to elevate some startups.
One of the things that this helps mitigate, we hope it helps mitigate, is the costs associated with owning homes in the city of Detroit. Not only owning homes, but renting homes, down payment assistance for single-family dwellings and townhomes.
All right, so joining us now is the lady in charge, Hillary Doe. She's Michigan's chief growth officer. First, I want to note that many people are looking at this growth as an amazing thing, which it is.
Absolutely.
But I think something that is sometimes forgotten here is that we're still losing domestic talent, right? So we're getting people in, but we're also seeing younger people leave the state of Michigan. So I guess that's the biggest problem you've got to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. We are at the beginning of our trends really going in the right direction. So we are seeing great progress. 66% of Michigan counties grew. Obviously, Detroit grew for the second year, and we saw other places like Flint report growth for the first time in 25 years. Our trends in general are really going the right way, and our young adult population is actually accelerating at a faster rate than 45 other states. So we're starting to really see things move in the right direction. But we're at the beginning of that journey, and we have to do more to ensure that more folks continue to stay here, and we're retaining more and more of our talent.
You know, I would like to consider myself a younger person, but I don't think I am anymore. So what is it that the younger kids want when they're looking at their options and they see Chicago or Philly or New York or some places? Are we just not cool enough? Like, what's happening?
First of all, we're very cool.
Okay, good.
And especially, I mean, the Detroit region is very cool, both to folks here in our state and across the country. We've talked to 20,000 Michiganders at this point and actually polled 6,000 young people across the country, asking them what they're looking for in a place to call home. Folks want great places, which includes, walkable, amenity-rich communities. But they also want things like housing investments and the ability to own a home. That was one of the most motivating factors. So our historic investments in housing are making a difference. We can see that. They also want access, when you're talking to young families, to things like childcare. And we saw Michigan make pre-K free for all 4-year-olds in our state. Those kinds of big policy changes are and will continue to help in our efforts to retain and attract talent.
When we're looking at or considering the younger population, and I don't know a better way to say it than just that cool factor, right? But, what Mayor Duggan and all those partners in the city of Detroit have done to make downtown Detroit a cool place to be and to live.
Sure.
Is that a factor, just that place where there's cool lighting and great places to walk around? You can go to the bar, you can bring your friends downtown. Is that a factor?
Absolutely. And I would say the coolest thing about Detroit is and always has been Detroiters. The culture, our music, the incredible things that we make that spread around the world. And so we need to be telling that story loud and proud. Our Michiganders are our best ambassadors. So I encourage everybody to go ahead and brag about what a wonderful place we live. And we actually launched the most ambitious talent attraction and retention campaign in the country over the last 18 months. And that marketing effort has so far brought in over 40,000 people saying they're interested in living and working here in Michigan. So it's working. Those stories work. Go ahead and tell your friends.
tell everybody.
Yeah.
How do we stack up in terms of cost of living when you look at some of these other big cities that people are going to?
Yeah, well, Michigan has a great cost of living. That's one of the sort of cherries on top in our pitch. We actually have the 4th lowest, for example, housing prices in the country. So for some of our boomerangs, maybe Michiganders who've left the state and are considering a place to call home, that's a big draw, for considering coming back home. And we also have about a 10% or lower cost of living just in general on goods. So, even though folks here might feel a pinch and folks across the country do, and we need to keep fighting for ensuring affordability for all Michiganders, we do have it a little bit easier than some other folks.
What would you say are the top career opportunities that we have in Michigan. When
Yeah.
when you're trying to attract somebody, I think the number one thing is, well, where am I going to work?
Yeah. Well, I will say first and foremost, folks can go to the michiganlife.org, and there's a career portal there. And today there are over 140,000 open jobs here in Michigan.
140,000?
That's correct. And in great fields, things like semiconductors, high-tech fields, fast-growing industries. And we're actually the second fastest-growing startup community for entrepreneurship and innovation in the country. And those are really appealing jobs, especially for young talent. So, we have a lot going for us, and incredible sort of tides. I shouldn't say headwinds, the opposite of that, right? At our back, really pushing us in the right direction.
I've heard some conversations about our region being maybe eventually a smaller version of Silicon Valley. Do you think that that's a possibility?
I think we actually had folks from Silicon Valley come into Detroit and say, how do we do better? Because we actually are seeing such fast growth and real attraction. We have organizations here like Black Tech Saturdays, for example, which I would argue is now the preeminent, ecosystem
Right.
for Black and brown founders.
Yep.
And, there's really nothing like it across the country. Those kinds of communities are critical when you're trying to retain and attract founders. And we'll continue to get better and better at investing as well in our founders. We passed something called the Innovation Fund last year to continue capitalizing those in companies and ensure that they stay here in our state. So yeah, I think we're doing a lot of things right in that direction.
So we're doing a lot of things right, but we still are seeing some people leave.
Absolutely.
So when you talk to those, or I'm assuming you've had the opportunity
Yes.
to talk to those who have left, what's their reason? Why?
Yeah. Well, I think historically folks leave for a couple reasons. They leave looking for opportunities, and again, we're working on that, and it's getting better. But over the generations, that's what folks have left looking for, and we need to tell our story again to bring them back. But they may have also left because we didn't do what we needed to in terms of investing in our places or investing in talent in the past. So those kinds of investments we're making now are really critical, and we want to double down on them since we're seeing those trends go in the right direction.
Is there anything to just being a younger person and saying, I just want to spread my wings and fly. I want to get out of here. How do we, I don't want to say clip the wings, but how do we tell them, but this is a great place. There's no reason to leave.
Yeah, I don't think we want to. I think that we want to make sure that folks know what we have available. It's incumbent on us to make sure that folks see our great places and, the great programs we're making available. But also for folks that choose to go and, check out what the world has to offer, that's a great benefit to us when they know what we have on offer and they choose to come back home.
Right.
I'm a boomerang myself.
Yep.
They're bringing home
Show
with
your
them
tattoo
all their
real
life
quick.
skills. Oh, gosh, I don't know the best camera.
I don't
for
either.
it. Here
Is
we
there one
go.
around?
I don't know. Here we go. There it is. I got 2 peninsulas on my arm there. A little Michigan up my sleeve. But all to say, they're bringing with them all that rich life experience, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And hopefully, we'll also do a better and better job attracting folks who picked their head up off their pillow in Seattle or Nashville or Austin to say, hey, I want to try on Michigan. I want to try on Detroit.
Right. We've talked about opportunities. Where are we in terms of competitiveness for salaries?
Yeah. I think that the Midwest in general has room to grow in that regard. But because we also have this lower cost of living and lower cost of housing, it really comes out in the wash in that regard. But
that's a
when
tough message to send.
Right. Exactly. Especially when you're a young person and you're maybe getting your first offer or something like that. So one of the things that we did at the michiganlife.org is create a cost of living calculator to really help folks kind of compare what their options can look like in black and white. And
How far that dollar can go, basically.
Can go, yeah. And also help them see holistically what their life can look like. So if this is the cost of living and these are the housing options available and, here's kind of holistically the job options available, what's my day-to-day going to look like? And that's really what I encourage folks to do, because the thing that Michigan will beat other states on every time is that holistic quality of life. Not just an incredible 9 to 5 full of opportunity, but also an incredible 5 to 9 with unmatched natural beauty, incredible cultural experiences. And when you put all of that together with that cost of living, you really get something. I've lived all over Brooklyn and LA and Chicago, and I wanted to be right here, and I think others will continue to make that choice.
You said that we're starting to kind of catch up in terms of salaries. How long do you think it'll be until we're competitive with, say, Chicago?
I think that looking to the entrepreneurship and innovation and the startup ecosystem that's growing here is a great place to look for that, because what it does is attracts investment from across the country, right? And so you're also attracting talent from across across the country, and you're attracting competition from across the country. And that's what you want to see in order to grow salaries, because you'll see folks needing to compete in a national market, right? And as that continues to grow, which, like I said, second fastest growing in the country, that's a way to really throw the gas on in terms of continuing to see salary growth.
So maybe 2 years, 5 years,
Well,
10?
you said 2. Let's lean into that.
All right. Well, it's live. It must be true, right? I mean, realistically, though, I mean, what's a timeline? 5 years, 10 years?
You know, it really will depend industry to industry what we'll see. So I think there's no one answer to that question. But I would just encourage young people to look at the opportunities available, look on resources like the Michigan Life to see what industries are fast growing and where there are lots of open jobs.
Right.
And that will give you a sense of where there's strong economic sort of wins.
I think that message that you said, too, is incredibly important, because salaries may not be quite apples to apples, but what you get here is worth so much more, and your dollar does go so much further here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, on net, then you'll end up, I mean, at least this was certainly my experience. I was in a, 800 square foot apartment in Brooklyn,
Sure.
and I joked with too many mammals. I had, a dog and my husband and a kid, and now we live in, Detroit proper, 8 minutes bikeable from downtown in a nice big house, and I just could not have had that quality of life.
And you're probably spending about the same much, too.
Much less,
Is
I
it
think.
less?
Much less. And so I think that is what you'll find, right, when you really look at it. Apples to apples, it's like an incredible deal to be here for, I would argue, an even better quality of life.
I would, too.
Yeah.
I would, too. Hillary, thank you so much. You're doing great work.
Thank you.
by the
I
way.
appreciate
Thank you
it.
for everything you're
Yeah.
doing. All right.